Hey friends, Pastor Fieberkorn here with you for Catechism Mondays. Today is March the 20th, 2023. And remember, we've been going through the Sacrament of the Altar, our sixth and final chief part. Just a little sneak preview coming in the Easter season. We're going to set aside Catechism Mondays and do something new on Monday. Part of that's because we've been through the entire catechism, and it's a new season in our church year, so it just seems fitting to start something new. I've enjoyed covering the catechism for the past about year and a half, 2 years on Monday mornings, and but we've made it through. So I will probably come back to this at some later point in time, but just a preview. But we've got three more little instantiations of the sacrament of the altar. We're going to finish up what's in the catechism. Remember, in previous weeks, we've been looking at Old Testament for shadows. Now here we're back in the words of the catechism themselves. What is the benefit of eating and drinking? What is the benefit of eating and drinking? That's what we're going to talk about today. So if you remember, about a month ago or so, we introduced the sacrament of the altar with these words. What is the sacrament of the altar? We said it's the true body and blood of our Lord Jesus Christ under the bread and wine, instituted by Christ himself for us Christians to eat and drink. So there we have the visible element, the bread and the wine, the institution of Christ. But what's it for? If you remember the criteria for a sacrament, it's also going to bring God's grace. It's going to bring the forgiveness of sins. But first, dealing with this presence of the body and blood of Christ, where is this written? You hear these words all the time in the words of institution. Anytime you're in church and hear the Lord's Supper celebrated, the pastor consecrates the elements, the bread and the wine, with the words of Jesus, our Lord Jesus Christ. On the night he was betrayed, took bread, and when he had given thanks, he broke it and gave it to the disciples and said, "Take, eat, this is my body, which is given for you. This do in remembrance of me." Again, this is my body. That's why we believe it's the true body and blood of Christ. And again, several weeks ago, we looked at some other verses that attest to that same reality. In the same way, also, he took the cup after supper, and when he had given thanks, he gave it to them, saying, "Drink of it, all you. This cup is the New Testament of my blood, which is shed for you for the forgiveness of sins." Okay, that's the key part right there. That's why we celebrate this meal. Yes, our Lord commanded it, but not as some rule to be obeyed, but as a means by which he could give us his grace and feed us with his mercy and forgiveness. So that's the benefit of the eating and drinking. So there in the words of institution, you have not only what the sacrament of the altar is. Jesus says, "This is my body, this is my blood," but also why do it? It's shed for you for the forgiveness of sins. And so that next question there is our focus for today. What is the benefit of eating and drinking? What do I receive when I go up there? Yes, the body and blood of Christ, but also read this. These words given and shed for you for the forgiveness of sins show us that in the sacrament of forgiveness of sins, life and salvation are given through these words. And then I love this line. It's perhaps one of my favorite in the entire catechism. Where there is forgiveness of sins, there is life and salvation. Okay? Apart from God's forgiveness, there's only death and damnation. But with the forgiveness of sins, there's life and salvation. And so we want to make ourselves available to the places where God's forgiveness is offered so that we can have life. As we've learned, those are the means of grace: hearing his word, being baptized, receiving his sacrament. I once had a friend who left the Lutheran church and said, all Lutherans talk about is baptism and the Lord's Supper. Well, there are worse things to talk about. Are not these things our Lord gave us before he ascended into heaven? He says, "Go, baptize all nations." What does he to say to his disciples right before he's about to die? "Eat and drink my body and blood." What does he say in the upper room to the disciples after the resurrection? "Forgive one another's sins, forgive and retain sins." There you have the office of the keys, baptism, and the Lord's Supper. Jesus left us with these things as great gifts by which we could receive his mercy. And we can sail over hill and dale and through sea and over land, trying to seek his grace and mercy, or we can just simply find him in the places he's promised to be found. And surely when you kneel at the rail of Holy Communion and there receive his body and blood, you are receiving Jesus exactly where he's intended you to, at the table of his Lord, where he serves you again and again. That's the benefit of eating and drinking. All right, we'll see you later this week. God's peace to you, and have a great rest of your Monday.